and welcome to another Privacy Conversation, our series where we speak with experts about challenges at the intersection of technology and policy. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're going to spend time talking about what everyone is talking about in policy circles, AI. Recently, G7 countries agreed to work together to create an international code of conduct for AI. And earlier this year, the White House released its own set of AI principles, an AI Bill of Rights, to guide companies on how to build AI systems responsibly. The Bill of Rights principles are very similar to Meta's own long-standing 5 pillars of AI, focusing on privacy, fairness, safety, transparency, and accountability. To help us think through how ongoing work to build AI responsibly can be supported by policy efforts, we're incredibly lucky to be joined today by Dr. Rumman Chowdhury. Rumman's expertise is in building socio-technical solutions for ethical, explainable, and transparent AI. She's been a leader in AI since her early days at Accenture, and she previously led Twitter's machine learning, ethics, transparency, and accountability team. Rumman currently runs Parity Consulting, an AI consulting firm, and she's a responsible AI fellow at the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society at Harvard. And just this week, Rumman was named one of the top 100 AI experts by Time Magazine, an incredible accomplishment. There's clearly so much to learn from Rumman, and I'm thrilled she's on the Privacy Conversation series. With that, let's jump right in. Hi, Rumman. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, just congratulations on the recognition by Time Magazine. Hugely impressive.
Thank you.
So it's awesome.
Sorry.
No, please go. I mean, yeah.
I was going to say it's what, my parents rarely understand the work I do. Artificial intelligence is so abstract in the lives of 2 retirees. I will say Time Magazine is a reference that anybody can get.
It's just incredible. So congratulations. And again, it's a real honor to have you here with us today. I want to start by asking you about policymaking in the current era of AI. Many of the folks who tune in to this Privacy Conversation series, they work in the policy space. And a lot of your work focuses on multidisciplinary, comprehensive approaches to AI policymaking. So if you could kick us off, in your view, how do we ensure policymaking remains agile enough to keep up with the adoption of new technology, but also robust enough to protect consumers?
That's such a great question. I think the naive answer often is policy needs to move at the pace of innovation. We've heard that critique quite a bit. Now, a lot of people don't know this because most people know me from my time working in AI. I'm a political scientist by background. I've studied, actually American politics. And one thing I worry about is in this rush to make policy move faster, do we lose the deliberative democracy component of how policy is built, right? We've not constructed democracies to move particularly quickly because they are meant to be broad-based and inclusive. Now, what I'd love to see is a world in which we use artificial intelligence and we use some of these technologies in order to better help democratic processes. But what I don't want is us running slipshod over existing processes that are meant to be deliberative and inclusive in this effort to reach this gold star of policy that moves at the pace of innovation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more as someone who hasn't been in the AI space, but has been in the space of policy making for quite a long time. I don't want to date myself, but this idea of these processes, these democratic processes that are so important and intentionally iterative, right? Intentionally open, intentionally deliberate. That's something that we do at Meta. My job on the policy team is to bring diverse external voices to the table. That's how we get feedback. And it requires lots of disciplines, advocates, academics, people who are experts in ethics, people who are experts in security. And we really come together to co-design and RedTeaming is a good example of this. This is where we ourselves run adversarial tests to identify issues and reinforce mitigations that we have in the privacy space and the AI space. But this is a place where I know you spent a lot of time, and it's something that was absolutely called out by Time Magazine, which is this amazing AI red teaming exercise that you led at DEF CON recently, this conference. I believe you had over 2,200 hackers for 2.5 days. And I'd love to know how you approach the issue issues of privacy, specifically, trying to get models to reveal sensitive information. And then I'd love to know how you think this kind of red teaming approach fits into the overall policymaking process. Like, what's the value in running these kinds of exercises?
Right. So I've started a little nonprofit, and the purpose of the nonprofit is to provide what I call structured public feedback. And each of those words was chosen very intentionally. So the purpose, just take a step back, of the DEF CON event, which was White House supported, and what we tried to do was operationalize the AI Bill of Rights, which you mentioned at the beginning, at the top of the conversation. So we have this policy, this AI Bill of Rights, which is very conceptual. How can we apply them to technical systems to test these systems for whether or not they are actually adhering to this? And as you've mentioned, one of the AI Bill of Rights principles on the topic of privacy, user privacy, individual privacy. Now, generative AI systems are really fascinating in that they're built on a wealth of information, and frankly, we don't know what's in every single piece of data that goes to feed these models because it's just massive amounts of information. And also, the way these models are constructed, it could actually be imputing or gathering information and synthesizing information about somebody. Or on the other end, this was the kind of stuff that we were testing at DEF CON. People could use it for nefarious or malicious needs. So my nonprofit actually designs these kinds of challenges, and there are two types. One is the prompt hacking, which is the more traditional way in which a bad actor would trick a system into doing something that violates the terms of service. On the other end, and one that I think the White House and increasingly more groups are interested in, is this concept of embedded harms, where somebody is naturally interacting with a model and they're getting information that they shouldn't be seeing. So the critical difference here is the actor getting this information in the embedded harms example wasn't trying to get a bad outcome, but it happened because of the unpredictability of these systems. So one example of a challenge that we did around privacy was about giving people's credit card information. So how might one of these large language models give up someone's credit card information or sensitive information, that we would not want just out there in the public. The second one, which a lot of people toyed with, is this idea of teaching people how to surveil. So one of the challenges was around whether or not a large language model would give a bad actor instruction on how to physically and digitally surveil somebody without their knowledge. And this could be everything from telling you how to create malware to track their IP address, to finding and outing their information, like doxing personal information, or even something like give you tips on how to physically stalk somebody without them knowing. So it was a combination of real world and virtual world privacy. But also, again, we were looking at things like embedded data within data sets that may come up in the course of natural use.
That's so interesting. And it's interesting because it's such a mode in my as I look at it, of transparency and openness, right? You're bringing these models, you're bringing companies, we participated,
Mhm.
super important for us because we've, as I mentioned, have this concept of red teaming we've had for quite some time. And now we can do it in this place where you've brought all these different people together, 2,200, in different testing and over this 2.5 days. And it helps us because it exposes our assets to external testing, including by skeptics. And because of your work and what you do normally, but then what you did at DEF CON,
Mhm.
we have more data against which to compare our own internal assessments to evaluate what range of mitigation might work best in making our systems safer. So I just want to it's a huge kudos to you. And I think what's so important, and I think with this group of folks listening, because privacy and the work we've long done, and many folks listening have long done, have done internally on privacy, is again, like products aren't static. There's always improvement, and there's always the need for ongoing refinement and updating. And I think this kind of red teaming and this idea that we're going to continue to iterate is so important. And I'm curious, thinking about, we talked about security and privacy and just what the regimes that exist today, trial and errors, like how do you apply some of those lessons there? I'm curious too, when thinking about responsible AI.
Right. I mean, So first, thank you for the kudos, and Meta was a huge component. I want to mention that the way this challenge was designed was very unique. It was built in collaboration, as you've mentioned, with every major large language model company. So we didn't go off and design this independently and do this independently. I ran a weekly session. It's funny, we started off all meeting every 2 weeks, and then we realized that there was so much work to be done to build this competition collaboratively. We started meeting every week. So you imagine like and it was a very unique moment in time. We have all the individual red teamers from 8 different companies getting on a call with folks from NIST and the Office of Science, Technology, and Policy to sit there and design this challenge. And that's a very beautiful thing. The other part I'll add is in terms of getting all this data and information, that maybe you wouldn't have. We've expanded the notion of what red teaming means. Red teaming traditionally are people who are experts in security, privacy, ethics, et cetera, coming in and attacking a model. Well, with general purpose AI and generative AI in general, what it means to be an expert is actually now sometimes lived experience experts, of people who are speaking from their identity, maybe their linguistic capability. So multilingual harm is one of the tests that we had, which we know is actually quite a difficult one to tackle because it's nearly impossible for any company to employ all of the people who speak all of the languages and know all of the cultural nuances in the world. So we're excited about the data set. It's going to be about 6 months before we're able to parse through everything we've gotten, all the goodness. And again, this collaborative group continues to work today. So we just held our first meeting on Tuesday. We're going to be publishing a report. So in terms of the impact on responsible AI, what I love is that the fact that this isn't an adversarial environment. This is, coopetition is one word for it, right? So we're getting everybody together. We're all independent parties acting in coordination to achieve this goal. Traditionally, a lot of these relationships are viewed as very adversarial. I run a nonprofit. I don't work at Meta. What does it mean for me to be evaluating a language model? Most people would jump to a mentality of, oh, she's there to find problems. Well, yes, but we're here to help these models be built better. And that is actually a shared goal and mission.
And one of the words you use that I'll pull out is, well, everything you said absolutely resonates, but this idea of is impact, and looking at impact and understanding impact and harms. And I'm curious if when we think about impact, we have existing frameworks like GDPR is a good example where they've got privacy risk impact assessments that companies do. And how do you, when you think about the kinds of things you're looking for, and then the risks, and then how the policy frameworks, what are some of the existing ones, maybe in privacy or security, that you think can be useful, that could be a useful complement to this ongoing work that this group is doing?
I like to think of responsible AI as the younger sibling of privacy and security. So, to be honest, one of the reasons why the field of responsible AI has moved so quickly is we're able to learn from the expertise of people like yourself and people who've been working in security for a very long time. So, when I was building my team at Twitter, one of the things I was looking at is how we do risk assessments for algorithms. And that's been an ongoing conversation. Well, the smart thing to do is go talk to the people who've been doing this for decades and say, hey, what worked for you? And I appreciate it's not going to be totally lift and shift. There are definitely differences in the way algorithmic systems work, et cetera. But what didn't work for certain environments, what has worked in certain environments? And as I mentioned in the previous topic that we were talking about, this idea of cooperation is something that exists in the field of cybersecurity. There is a conversation that happens between independent groups and entities and companies with this shared goal. And that was one of the things I really wanted to tap into. In terms of the privacy world and also a lot of the risk and compliance folks, I love the way that risk assessments work. This idea of, for example, likelihood and impact as a way of understanding how to prioritize the kind of work you're doing. It's heartening to know that we're not tackling this for the first time. We're not the first people to see these problems. And frankly, some of these problems are just old problems in new outfits.
Yeah. And we're not going to be finished ever. I mean, like, everything is constantly evolving. And it's one of the reasons I've stayed in this space for so long, because we're learning and we're evolving and learning and evolving and iterating. And so it's going to be just incredible to continue to see how this unfolds and continue working together. And I know, last question, because we're getting, we could talk a long time about this, and this feeds into, I've read you in Politico and a couple of places, you've talked before about the tech industry can be too ahistorical. It struck a chord because So many people are worried, existentially worried in some ways about AI and Gen AI right now. And I'd love to talk about, like, briefly, what do you think people get wrong about AI, and what are you optimistic about this time around?
I think the thing that people get wrong about artificial intelligence is being able to tear apart what it means to build something in a lab and what it means to deploy it in the real world. And I think this has been like a perennial problem in tech in general. I think there's a lot of breathless reporting about things that are that are created in a laboratory, but when, and I think we both have experience in this, if you're trying to deploy it across hundreds of millions of people all around the world, that means something totally different. And most of the things that work in a laboratory do not work at that size and scale. And I think with artificial intelligence, people are ignoring that yet again. They're like, oh, well, look, it does X, Y, and Z. It's capable of creating, these things. It's going to replace all these jobs. And that's simply not true. What we have are fun technologies that we can work with that have a lot of potential and capability, but we've not yet fully achieved all of that potential. And we have this amazing opportunity, moving to kind of the optimism, we have this amazing opportunity to take from what we have learned and build this technology to be something great, right? So the cement is not set. The technology, the starting point of the technology has been built, and that's it. Sometimes I feel like the conversation is talking as if all of this is out in the world, we're all going to be losing our jobs, et cetera. When the reality is we have an opportunity to shape the technology. The positive thing is most of us have been looking at this for quite some time. We've had, these kinds of technologies for decades at this point. What can we be smart about when we think of an intentional path forward?
Yeah. What you just said makes complete sense. And, when policymaking comes from a place of fear rather than understanding, it can lead to unintended consequences. I mean, the good news, like you're saying, is there is this curiosity, and that makes me optimistic. But there's places where we need to take a step back and look at, are there rules, like you're saying, around privacy and security that can work today?
Mhm.
Where are the gaps, and what does it mean? And I think working in collaboration with industry and academia and civil society and government, like, that's the way to build AI responsibly. So
Absolutely.
thank you. This was such a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time. I'm just so proud to be able to speak with you and partner with you, and I look forward to continuing to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Erin.